Hey YouTubers, I want to show you a motorbike I made about 45 years ago. Uh, it has a large Wisconsin motor off of a cultivator or a concrete mixer, and I'm not sure which, I don't remember, but either way, a lot of that old stuff used Wisconsins. They were the good motor back in the day. This thing has a highway bar that's off of a British hardtail chopper looking bike I had back in the 70s. An old BSA, matter of fact. And the front fork is a girder front end off of a Goodyear bicycle that's bent back a little bit where I wrecked it one time. You can see the paint's popped off the forks. And on the other side, the tread of the tire is embedded into about here on the pipe on the other side. I'll show you in a little bit where I wrecked it, barefoot riding it, young and dumb. Shouldn't have been on it, flying down the street. And I pulled in on the brake and the ball popped off the cable. And it got close to the barbed wire and I had to jump off and let it take a ditch. And I took a ditch and skinned my foot up. But anyway, the motor's a big old Wisconsin. The twist grip is a 3-speed bicycle shifter with the detent ball taken out so that it makes real good throttles. The return spring for the throttle is a Volkswagen brake spring. Held to 2 front brake shoes slammed in against the adjuster at the bottom on early Volkswagens. Way before disc brakes on the front. Jack shaft is a couple pillow block bearings and a number 41 sprocket cut down small enough for bicycle chain to fit on it. Bicycle chain's the same distance between the rollers, but the width of each link is wider, so you got to grind them down. And that one didn't have a threaded set screw hole, so I just welded it to the shaft. It didn't have to be perfect. Kind of overkilled on my brackets on the seat post, but it's a lot of times back then, whatever I had dictated whatever I used. I'd be wanting to ride that day, you know. Up on the top, you can see where I used a swinging bracket. It was a solo seat bracket that people would use to put solo seats on old rigid frame choppers. I turned it upside down and made me a top motor mount out of it. The gas tank is a Sears All-State tank. Originally, it had the cap that had the oil compartment in the cap, and you fill it up to the level line, pour it in on a tank full of gas, and that gave you the right amount of oil and gas mix on an old early Sears All-State. I rigged a Echo or Shimano or some kind of petcock in the tank because I didn't have the original, and I keep these in the basement and I don't want any trouble with any leakage. Plus, I keep them strapped to the ceiling when they're down here, just so if a tire were to pop or something, they're not going to fall over and dribble gas and cause me a fire issue. This frame, even though it's triangulated, it's not squared off on that top bar, and I was laying into it real hard one day and it bowed. Wheel got all crooked and the chain jumped off. So when I got home and straightened it all out, I put a cheater in there, a stringer I think you'd call it, to kind of keep it from hiking up that top bar. If that bar was straight, the problem would have never happened. You learn that from looking at bridge structure. My exhaust pipe is an old vacuum cleaner suction extension, cut 2 or 3 different places and welded together and hung by a spring so you can take it off pretty quick if you need to do something to it. 10-speed back wheel on its tallest gear. A Maytag washing machine pulley. I use them a lot on these bikes. I've got 4 or 5 bikes with pulleys on them off of early Maytags. Down here, if they didn't have a set screw, which they didn't, they coasted on a shaft with bronze bushings. I welded a collar to it so I'd have a way to lock it down on the shaft without permanently welding it. On the pulley on the motor, the set screw hole was broke out. Let's see if I can get my light situated just right. So I just nickel silver welded the key to the pulley so the key wouldn't be an issue of flying out. It still has a set screw on the other side. See the big old mag back there? It produces the spark. Old motor's got real noisy mains, but they're pitted from having water in it at one time. When I first got it, it had been sitting with the head off. But I cleaned them up and they're doing okay. It doesn't really, it roars, but it's not getting any worse. It's got good oil in it. Windshield was on an old motorbike we took in, a motorcycle we took in at the car lot I worked at, and took it off because it looked goofy. So I put it on this bike more as a joke than anything. And I fooled with Ramblers at the time, so I put a Rambler emblem on it. The clutch deal is a foot clutch. Push it down, it loosens the belt, let off, and it tightens it. And it don't slip a lick. But in order to be able to start it, you push it down and you flip this little lever over, and it catches on that bar and holds it in the neutral till you get it started and running. Then, the whole time you're riding, when you come up to a stop, you stop intentionally leaning to the right because you got your foot on the clutch. So it's not the best setup, but it made me mobile. That was all that mattered back then. So when you first push it down, that little catch that holds it into neutral, I'll do it here, clicks out of the way, and then from then on, you're good to go until the next time you got to start it. This rod here, let me get my light over here. That rod that the clutch linkage is made on is a Triumph back brake plate stabilizer. Held the brake plate from rotating on an early Triumph motorcycle. And the pegs and all that was leftover stuff from when I was doing hardtail stuff back in the 70s. I was telling you about wrecking it and messing up the tire, and you can see evidence of the tire on the daggone bar where the tire smacked the bar and squashed its rubber into the paint. That was not a fun day. That's a neat old front end though. Everybody called them girders back in the day. Guess that's what it is. That's about all I can tell you about it. It's made when I was in my 20s, so it's probably about 45 years old, 42, something like that. A lot of motor on a 26. I did have the handlebars upside down because it looked kind of cool, like an old race bike, but God, it was hard to handle. And it's heavy. It weighs a ton. I sat up here on the table to do this video, and me and my wife pulled our guts out getting the thing up here, but it was fun in the day. It just sits around now. I start it once every couple of years just for the heck of it. And my rope for starting it stays in this can up on the block. That's an old Tecumseh rod. I jokingly tell people that's all a Tecumseh is good for us, because they're going to throw a rod. Just save the rod and make you a pull rope out of it. But really, I like Tecumsehs. Their carburetors aren't all that swift, but you can make a manifold and put any carburetor on them about the right size, and you're good to go. It's not as particular as one might think. Collecting a lot of crud and goo sitting down here in the basement all these years. Every time I blow the basement out, the crud settles on the oil. But it's been around long enough. It's due to be a little bit grungy. Had stripped head thread, so I took a non-fouler and went down in and got on the last 3 threads that were good. That's an optical illusion. It's not cross-threaded in there, but it's only grabbing on about 3 threads. It had shot a plug out where somebody ran it with a plug loose. And I doctored it the only way I could at the time. Didn't have any tools, anything fancy, still don't, but it doesn't stop me. I keep making stuff with what I got. I made up this little sign I take to shows with me just because it's along the line of comical. Directions: hold grips tightly, twist throttle wide open, pull the seat cover out of your ass, and calm your nerves with alcohol. And that clutch linkage is off of a rototiller. But these are on YouTube under Wade Made Motorized Mayhem, or John's Motorbikes, or Wade Made Motorbikes. I've got 21 bikes right now, and I'll be building more because I'm fired from my job, so I'm just going to retire and not do any more work except piddling and playing down here. It's a lot of motor, though. One thing people ask, I wanted to tell you, is people ask, well, doesn't your leg get into that pulley? if it does, you done wrecked the bike, because your leg doesn't go down there. Your leg goes out here by the tank. They're not thinking when they say that, but you'd be surprised how many people ask that same question. You'd be hard pressed to get your leg over into that. You'd have to really try. Like I said, your legs are coming out here, unless you're very, very short and not paying attention. But no, it's not an issue. But someday I'll do a video of it out there in the street running, but I'd have to clean the varnish out of the carburetor, I believe. It's been 3 or 4 years since I last started it at one of the Beatersville shows, I think it was. But I'll make more videos, and I'll post them as I make them. Thanks for watching. Wade Made Motorized Mayhem, John's Motorbikes. Or John's Motorized Bicycles. That's what they're under. Thanks. Bye-bye.